Well, hello there, this is Keith from Rural Revolution, and today I'd like to talk to you about spring bulbs. Now, I'm sure I won't be alone when I say that this time of the year can be a bit of a struggle. There is still beauty in the countryside and in the garden, but it can be so hard to notice at times. Instead, it's all too easy for our eyes to get drawn towards the endless grey skies. The spectacular colours of autumn are long gone, and the lush green foliage of last summer now seems like a lifetime ago. But then, just as you think that the gloom is never ending, it happens. We start to get the odd day where the skies turn to that lovely welcoming blue, and for the first time in months you can actually feel the warmth of the sun on your face. This sudden change entices you out into the countryside and the garden, and you first notice those tiny little buds on the trees and shrubs, and with them comes the promise of life and vibrancy. At last, springtime is almost with us. For me, a real highlight of this time of year is to see the spring bulbs bursting into life. Once those green spears have shot through the soil, we can watch them grow and grow and grow before they finally explode into a huge variety of shapes and colours, like this beautiful iris. Or these, one of my personal favourites, the humble snowdrop. Over the past couple of years, we've been working at increasing the amount of spring bulbs in our own garden. And as you can see from these photos that I took today, we're having some great results. And within a few weeks we'll be rewarded with a beautiful display of flowers, which by using varieties with different flowering times should hopefully last us into early summer. Now we're fortunate enough to have bulbs all over our back garden. The technique that we used to do this wasn't hard work, and it didn't cost a lot of money either. It's a simple technique called bulb division, and I want to show you how I did it all today. Hopefully soon you'll have a garden that's absolutely full of spring bulbs too. Now, it's really important for me to add at this point, do not do what I'm doing in this video. It sounds silly, I know, but I'm just showing you the technique on how to do this here. Now what you'd usually do is to wait until after the bulbs have flowered. Now I'm doing this far too early. As I say, you'd usually wait until after the flowering process and when the leaves are starting to yellow off, and that's when you'd usually divide bulbs. As I say, I'm just showing you the technique here today, so just ignore the timings and enjoy your bulbs, and then after they've died down, the flowers have gone, then it's the time to divide them. Okay, so don't do as I'm doing now, please. For the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to be using this raised bed here. It's looking a bit sparse at the moment. Obviously all the summer annuals are long gone by now, and I've actually moved some of the other plants that are in here off to other containers, so it is a bit empty at the moment, but hopefully we can improve that with some extra spring bulbs next year. As you can see, we've got a bit of a selection in here. We've got some very early flowering plants here. This gorgeous iris, and we've also got this stunning white crocus. As I say, they were out very early, but we've also got some snowdrops that are just starting to poke their heads out, and we've also got some daffodils. Let's just have a closer look at this iris. I mean, isn't that impressive? Now, all of these plants that you can see here are the results of bulb division. The idea being to separate the plants and then move them to different locations, and over time they'll develop into new clumps, and then you can repeat the process over and over again. Now, our first step is to select the plant that we want to divide, and then we're gently going to remove the plants. I'm using a small fork here, as you can see. We're just going to work our way all the way around the plant there. We're going to have a little feel to make sure that there's nothing holding it in, and then we're gently going to lift the plant out and put it somewhere safe. And we're going to repeat the steps here with a crocus. So again, working very carefully around the plant, leave plenty of room, we don't want to damage the roots and the bulbs. Once we're sure that there's no resistance there anymore, we're going to gently lift the plant out. And we're just going to repeat the process for this small clump of snowdrops. It is a bit of a strange day today. What with the sunshine earlier and the flowers and the birds singing, it's almost got a tropical feel about it today. It's certainly not bad for the end of January in deepest, darkest Bedfordshire. I've just spotted this little guy hiding around the back here, just out of sight. It's one of last year's bulbs, and we can see this white flower that's just about to emerge, which means that this little snowdrop is now classified as a success story. Now I've placed all the plants that we're going to be working on in this tray here to make things a bit easier. They're all dug up now. Quite easy work, but then again the soil in my containers is pretty good now, to be fair. If you're digging them out of the ground, it can be a lot harder work. And the first thing we're going to do is just remove all the excess soil from around the base of the plants. Now once the soil's removed, the first thing you'll notice is that each clump of plants isn't one larger plant, but lots of smaller individual ones, like these snowdrops here. And moving over to the crocuses here, you can see it's exactly the same thing again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to very gently tease the roots apart here and separate this large clump of plants into the smaller individuals. As you can see there, we've got some healthy root growth. Lovely little plant there. And that's what it's all about, really. A nice healthy bulb and healthy roots. So the idea being here that once we've separated these, we can go ahead and replant them, and over time they'll actually develop into their own clumps of plants. As you can see, it's exactly the same here with the iris. Some irises actually have a rhizome rather than bulbs, but this variety here, as you can see, is a bulb variety, so our little technique works perfectly here. And as I mentioned earlier, we wouldn't usually be dividing bulbs this early on. We'd be waiting until after the flowering, and I'd also usually wait until the clumps were a lot bigger than this. I think that spring bulbs look nicer in groups rather than individually, but this video is just to give you an idea on the technique. And whilst I was there earlier on, I thought I'd remove the daffodils just to show you those. This technique works brilliantly for daffodils. Sometimes with daffs, once they clump, they can get overcrowded and they'll actually stop flowering. So by dividing daffodils, it can actually prolong the flowering, which is great. And as you can see, these fell apart as soon as I removed them, so that was nice and easy. So we're just going to move on to the final stage here. We're just going to replant all of the bulbs that we've divided. I usually plant them up to the depth they were originally in the ground, so somewhere about there. It should be fine. It's always better to go a little deeper if you are worried, rather than too shallow. And then as usual, I'll just put some mulch around the tops there. And there we go. And whilst we're here, I'm just going to take this opportunity to remove a couple of these weeds. And this technique, which is also known as planting in the green, can be highly successful, especially for snowdrops, where hopefully you should get a much higher success rate than planting dry bulbs. So why not give it a go? So hopefully over time these will go on to produce their own clumps of bulbs, which will give us a lot more flowers, which is fantastic. They're great for early pollinating insects, so that's brilliant for the wildlife. And from a selfish point of view, I absolutely love the looks of them, and they really, really do cheer me up. So let's keep an eye on these, and hopefully next year they'll be a success. We've got some big plans at Rural Revolution for the next few years, and we're looking at getting as many spring bulbs out into the local community as possible. So stay tuned for more news on that one. If you have any questions, just drop them into the comment section below, and thanks for watching.